Public affairs broadcasting from Rockingham County Radio, on the air and on demand. RCR24.com.
Welcome to the August edition of At Home with ADTS, a monthly radio program that presents topics that may be of interest to older adults and their caregivers, as well as talking about the services offered by ADTS and how we help people across our community. I'm Kathy Powers, the Executive Director here at ADTS, and my co-host is Ashley Cooper, our Director of Adult Day Services. ADTS has been in operation in Rockingham County since 1973. Formerly known as the Council on Aging, our goal is to enhance quality of life, empowering people to achieve optimum health, well-being, independence, and participation in our community. We like to start every show by thanking our local businesses that have supported ADTS over the past year through the Community Partners Program. As state and federal funding remains stagnant, these local businesses are helping expand our ability to meet the ever-growing needs in our community. Thank you to Pelham Transportation, Carolina Apothecary, Wells Fargo, Home Trust Bank, CJ Medical, the Rockingham County Arts Council, Sparks Oil, Church of the Epiphany, Piedmont Natural Gas, Eden Rotary, Woodmont United Methodist Church, and Plaza Mini Storage. We thank you all for your continued support. We also want to give a special thank you to the United Way of Rockingham County for their longtime and generous support of our Meals on Wheels program. United Way of Rockingham County brings together local people to raise local dollars to meet local needs that stay right here in our community. We thank everyone who contributes to the annual campaign, and if you would like information on how you can get involved, if you don't have a direct solicitation through your employer, please contact us here. We'll put you in contact with the United Way. Now I'm going to turn things over to Ashley, who's going to give us a couple of announcements as well as introduce today's guest.
Thank you, Kathy. We actually have several exciting things going on at the Leaf Center I wanted to share. First, we have two support groups. Our monthly Loving Someone with a Memory Impairment support group meets the second Monday of every month from 1:30 to 3. We also have one that's dedicated to individuals who've had a stroke or some type of brain trauma. That's called Mind Over Matter, and that meets the third Monday of every month from 1:30 to 3. This week, we are also offering two activities and supports for our caregivers. On Thursday, we are partnering with Brookdale in Reidsville to offer dementia and depression. Quite often, those symptoms are similar, and especially individuals with dementia tend to have depression or develop depression. And so we're going to discuss that topic and discuss ways that we can recognize symptoms and treatments as well. And that is this Thursday, August 16th, from 6 to 7 at Brookdale in Reidsville. And then the next day, Friday, August 17th, we have laughter yoga. No mat required for that one, no mat at all needed. And we have a wonderful lady named Liza who's coming in from Raleigh. It's actually one of our most requested caregiver support events that we offered throughout the year last year. And so she's going to come back, and she'll be at the Leaf Center, which is 104 North Washington Avenue, on Friday at 10 a.m. From 10 to 12 with lunch included. If you're interested in any of those events, please contact myself at 336-347-2328. That's 347-2328. Now, as we get to our guest, Miss Emily Scearce, she actually holds a MSW and an LSW from is a graduate of Joint Master in a Social Work program, a joint program of North Carolina A&T University and the University of North Carolina at Greensboro. She's worked as a social worker at PACE of the Triad in Greensboro since 2012. At PACE of Triad, Emily provides support to participants and their families through comprehensive psychosocial assessments, case management, community referrals, counseling, and additional supportive services. From 2011 to 2012, Emily interned at ADTS, so she is one of ours. and worked with the CAP program. She continues to work closely with the Leaf Center since the partnership of PACE and Leaf last year. And we've mentioned PACE several times on the program, Emily, but first let me say thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And if you could tell us a little bit about PACE before we dive into our topic today.
Okay. PACE stands for Program of All-Inclusive Care for the Elderly. So we are a community-based program serving both Guilford and Rockingham County. And those who qualify for our program are 55 and older, and they meet a nursing home level of care. So we have a team of doctors, nurses, social workers, therapists that create individualized plans for our participants. And we do that through adult day health services, primary care. We provide medications, management oversight with all specialist appointments, home care, and lots of other services to help folks stay in the home. So that's our primary goal. For people who are struggling, maybe they don't have the right support or they have a lot of medical issues, our goal is to put all of those services in place to help them stay at home.
Wonderful. And as we mentioned in your introduction, that PACE the Triad is a partner of the Leaf Center. We are an alternative care setting. So since y'all are located in Greensboro, some of the folks in Rockingham don't necessarily have to go all the way to Greensboro every time they, for their daily adult day health needs, but they can come to our center instead.
Right.
Yes. So that it's a great partnership. We love it. Okay, so today's topic is about advanced directives and living wills. Actually, I was in a meeting prior to this with a caregiver, and we were discussing that. And it always confounds me how little people know about those two most important documents, if you ask me, that every person should have, advanced directive and a healthcare power of attorney. So before we get started, is an advanced directive the same thing as a living will?
Yes and no. So
Okay.
a living will, along with a healthcare power of attorney, is an advance directive.
Okay.
So the advance directive is the broad category, and there are different things that fall into that.
Okay. So what exactly is a living will then?
A living will is a document that allows you to choose different medical life-prolonging measures that you would or would not want in certain situations. Like if you have advanced dementia or another cognitive impairment and you're not able to make decisions for yourself, that living will tells the doctors, do you want to be on life support? Do you want antibiotics? And different things like that.
Feeding tube
Yes.
and all that kind of stuff too.
Yes.
Well, and I would say, Emily, this isn't just about a certain age. You don't just reach a certain age when suddenly this kind of thing becomes important. Any of us could be in a medical crisis at any time. And so thinking through getting this in place so that if you are in a position where you're unable to make the medical decisions that you would want, having this lined up in advance is a really valuable thing.
Yes, you're never too young, as long as I think you have to maybe be 18. You can have and should have an advance directive. And it can, when you first create it, you can be, as specific or as general as you want to be.
And I know it's funny, my mom and my family and I were having a conversation about end-of-life care, and if something was to happen a couple of years ago, and my mother mentioned that she did not want to extend extensive measures that would extend her life. And my brother said, well, then you should write that down someplace because I'm going to do everything I can that to save you. And I was like, oh, well, I would totally respect that and get that. And so after we left, she's like, I can't believe you responded that way. And the next day, I was on the phone trying to find somebody. I was like, because we need to have this in writing because I don't want to have this argument. And unfortunately and fortunately in our case, that something did happen. And I do remember those sitting there going, I don't know if I can make that decision at this point. So it was nice that we have had that, at least had that conversation and then tried to formalize it in some sort of manner. But I agree, it shouldn't be something that's waiting at a critical moment to then say, how should we handle these things?
And those are two of the major reasons that you would want to do it in advance, because it's a burden on the family. If they're going through, something just happens to you, then they have to, they're going to be emotional, and they kind of have to step away from that and make hard and tough decisions.
Right.
And then also you may say, well, my children, they can just decide, but they may not agree.
Right.
Yes.
Families don't always agree. Yes. We see that
Shocking.
a lot. Yes.
Who knew? We do see that a lot. Absolutely. So you mentioned that it can change. So if you go through the process and you get it signed, and we'll talk about all of that in just a minute. But if I do change my mind, you said that's allowed. So yes. How often should I revisit something like that?
Probably anytime your health changes. Mm-hmm. If you get a new diagnosis, mm-hmm. At least look at it once a year. I had something happen, but close to me, someone that I know that their loved one had not reviewed anything in a long time. They thought they had it set out. And so then when it came down to it, the right people weren't in place to be able to help make the decisions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's really important that you have those right mm-hmm. people in place. And so what are those people called, the people who make those right decisions for you?
Well, if you have a healthcare power of attorney, mm-hmm. Then you have a healthcare agent. And so it's different than a living will, because a living will, there's no one person assigned to oversee the decisions that you have made in that form. The healthcare power of attorney actually chooses someone, and it doesn't have to be a family member, but chooses and designates someone to be the one to speak up for you. And then if you have the living will, you can say in there, it's actually got the boxes to check. Do I want my healthcare power of attorney to be the final decision maker, or do I want the living will to be the final decision maker?
Well, and I think it's important for us to clarify that when you name someone as healthcare power of attorney or power of attorney in general, you're not relinquishing your rights to make your decision mm-hmm. while you have the capacity to do so. A lot of times we encounter people who say, well, I'm mom's power of attorney, so you have to listen to me and not mm-hmm. listen to her. Mm-hmm. And we remind people that as long as people have the ability and capacity to make their decisions for themselves, that power of attorney is not in effect. It's yes. when they are no longer able to make those decisions that comes into play.
Right. Mm-hmm. So it actually requires typically your physician and a second physician to say that this person is not capable of making their own decisions. And your decision-making capacity can change. Mm-hmm. Maybe you're in an accident and you're unconscious and not able to make your decisions, but you improve from that. It mm-hmm. doesn't mean that the healthcare power of attorney, just because it went into effect for that period of time, that now they can continue to make the decisions for you.
Right, and a living will clearly states that. Like it gives, doesn't it give like specific examples that said if this happens, then you can do this or don't do this, and I might be wrong, but it allows you to be able to be pretty specific, so that way your agent, your healthcare power mm-hmm. of attorney agent, knows exactly what your wishes are and things like that.
Yes, but it does depend on how specific you choose to be in those forms. Okay. You can go to a lawyer and have them draw up individualized, very specific forms to you, or you can go online and download forms.
Okay.
So they can be as easy as 3 pages that you just initial a few pre-filled out situations. Mm-hmm. So it just depends on the person that you've chosen as your healthcare power of attorney. Have you had discussions with them? Do you really trust them to know exactly what you would want, mm-hmm. Or do you feel like you need to be more specific?
Okay. Would the forms that you would download online, are those still legal? Are those still binding?
Yes. I believe that you can get forms from the North Carolina Secretary of State, okay. Which has an advanced directives registry. I think that you can get forms online from them, but also probably your physician should have forms.
Okay.
I know that the hospitals typically have forms that are pretty standardized that they use, and even a hospice facility would have forms. So I would think that they would be willing to give
probably
forms.
Just need to be notarized mm-hmm. or something like that.
Right.
Yes. So we say healthcare power of attorney, but you should probably have more than just one, right? Or what are your thoughts on recommendations?
You can actually only designate one person to be your healthcare power of attorney, but you can put in the form a backup.
Oh, okay.
Because that kind of defeats the purpose of mm-hmm. choosing one if you give it to multiple people, because maybe then they don't agree.
Right.
So you would choose the one, and you would always have a backup in case something happens to them.
Mm-hmm. Right. So I probably shouldn't pick somebody who lives in California.
No. No. It's going to be better if it's somebody who, unless they are able to fly back and forth frequently,
Right.
And that's not an issue for them.
Sure.
Because it may be that your healthcare power of attorney at some point, they're going to doctor's appointments with you to communicate and make decisions, because it doesn't necessarily mean that you are in the hospital and completely unconscious. You can still be living at home and need the help from a healthcare power of attorney to make the decisions.
Sure. Okay.
Do you need to tell them? Do they need to
Yes.
agree? Okay.
Yes.
That's going to be my next question.
You don't want to.
No.
You don't want to get that surprise.
No,
Like,
no.
congratulations, Emily, you've been named as my power of attorney.
Because
You get
they
to
can
make all my
choose
decisions.
not to make those decisions. So you want to tell your healthcare power of attorney. You want to tell your primary doctor
Okay.
or any specialist that you see. You want to maybe let other family members know as well. Give them a heads up, so that they're not surprised either when the doctor comes in. And
Do
says
multiple
they can't.
people need copies of the document itself, or do you just keep the one copy?
You should keep a copy, and you should give one to the healthcare power of attorney.
Okay.
Or if you just have a living will, because you don't have to have a healthcare power of attorney and a living will. So give it to your children or your spouse, and you can always give it to your doctor to keep on file.
I've also heard that you can register it with your hospital. That maybe I've heard a couple of folks mention that. Have you heard anything about that? Where, like for example, a lot of people in Reidsville go to Annie Penn. So maybe it might be a good idea to register it with their Department of Records or something like that. A few of them have mentioned that's something that they've done just as a backup to make sure.
I haven't heard that specifically, but I know that they do keep that information on file,
Okay.
when somebody goes in. Because pretty much every time you're going in, if it's something serious, they're going to be reviewing your advance directives. So even if you don't have them, when you go to the hospital, maybe you're needing surgery, they can pull out that packet and ask you those questions. And help you. You can choose someone then, but you don't really want to wait till that point.
Right.
So I would think that there probably is a place that they can put that in with your contact and insurance information.
Okay.
I was going to ask, what happens in a situation where I've made a living will and I've outlined I don't want this, I don't want that, I don't want feeding tubes, for example. I also happen to have named a healthcare power of attorney who reads that and goes, I know that she said she didn't want these things, but I think in this situation she would. What's more important? Does that person ultimately have the final say, even though it may be at odds with what you've stated you preferred?
It depends on how you have worded it in your living will. So like I said, it does have the box that you can check to say, follow my living will above what my healthcare power of attorney says, or follow what my healthcare power of attorney says, even if it's different than my living will.
Okay.
And also, if you haven't given copies to other people, if there's nobody to bring out your living will and show that the healthcare power of attorney is saying something different, then unfortunately, the hospital would have to, or whoever would have to follow what the healthcare power of attorney is saying. So that's why you want to make sure that you pick someone that you trust and that is capable of following your decisions. Because it may be a family member that you trust, but, it's going to be an emotional time. So maybe they're just not capable of making the decisions that you would want.
Right.
So I know there's also, I'm going to pivot a little bit, a form called MOST. Like, what exactly is that form?
So the MOST form, along with a DNR, are physician's orders. So they are not in themselves advance directives, but they can go along with them. And so your doctor has to sign either of those forms. The MOST form is medical orders for scope of treatment, so it goes into a little bit more detail than just the do not resuscitate order.
Okay.
So it talks about, do I want CPR if I don't have a pulse, or do I want CPR? Would I want to go to the hospital and get as much medical treatment, including, the breathing machines, ventilation, or would I just want to go and get basic treatment, but none of those life-prolonging kind of measures? And then it even breaks it down even further into, do I want a feeding tube? If I do I want it for a trial period? Or would I say, no, you can do everything else, but I don't want a feeding tube?
Right.
And then the do not resuscitate order which carries a little bit more weight, especially with the hospitals, is just, do you want CPR if your heart stops, if you don't have a pulse? And those forms, especially the DNR, is something that you put on your refrigerator, on your door, so that if 911 has to be called and they come out to your house, if they don't see the form, they're going to do CPR if they have to.
Right.
So if you've made that decision that it is not something that you want, then you have to make sure that they can see it when they come in. And the most form can go alongside that, and it gives some more direction, but it doesn't carry as much weight as a living will and other forms with the hospital.
I see.
Unfortunately, we have had situations in the past where paramedics have come in and started to resuscitate someone, and the family members saying, oh no, she had a DNR. If it's not posted and you have to go digging through filing cabinets to find that kind of information, they have to do what they've been charged to do. And so it's really important. So that's something we tell people, make it very obvious, put it in a very obvious place, which seems a little morbid.
You're right.
You know, like, here's my picture frame of my beautiful grandchildren and here's my DNR, but you know, it's just the way that it has to be. You have to make it very prominent.
Yes, I know at the Leaf Center we offer that. We have a discussion about advance directives, and I always say to them, you know, if you have a living will and you would like for us to follow it, then we'll need a copy of it. But if not, if you'd rather make that decision and bring that with you, that's fine. And that's usually the first time that people said, a living will. But they always, like you said, Kathy, go, well, I'm power of attorney. And I'm like, can you be a little bit more specific of what that means? So, and they'll go, oh, well, you know, Dad said I can do everything. And so I'm like, well, that's not necessarily the same thing. So,
So we always make sure that if someone is saying that they have healthcare power of attorney, that's great. If you can bring it in and we can have a copy, then we'll write that down. Otherwise, you know, we're going to treat you as the state or as the hospital, you know, would treat you. And there is, if you don't have those forms, there is a hierarchy that the state has set of these are the people that we will listen to. So it's going to start with a legal person, and then it's going to go to your spouse, and then it'll go to your children. So if you don't have the forms, there is, you know, kind of a list that they go down. But a lot of situations, sometimes we'll have people that are separated, and they've been separated for 20 years, and they think, you know, well, my children are going to be the ones to make the decision for me. I don't need a healthcare power of attorney. If you're still legally married, your spouse, even if you haven't lived with them in 20 years, is still going to have more decision-making authority than your children.
oh, wow. That's a scary thought.
Yes. So that's
Don't
another
burn that
reason.
bridge.
Somebody might have an axe to grind.
Exactly. Don't burn that bridge.
So that's another reason that you want to make sure that you have one.
Sure, absolutely. So, you know, I've through my working with caregivers have discovered it's a hard conversation to have. So if someone's having some difficulty, who do you recommend they reach out to kind of maybe help the family process, or to start that conversation, or to help them guide them through it? Who would you recommend they reach out to?
If it's a situation that the person maybe is moving towards end of life, they can always get that support from like hospice services, can provide some education. Your physician can help have those conversations. If you're part of any programs, you know, I know at PACE, the social workers, we talk about it when somebody comes into our program, and we talk about it every year. And if we notice any changes, then we're going to have family meetings. Or maybe just reaching out to a friend that you know maybe has been through that.
And again, we want to move this process up and,
Yes.
and think about it at an earlier age, and not wait until you're in crisis and then you're scrambling to try to make those decisions when emotions are higher.
Yes.
Planning ahead it sounds like it's key in this situation.
And you can always, I think we've said that you can change it.
Right.
So you can make it today, and what I make today may not be the same decisions that I would make in 30 years or 40 years.
Right.
And
So
I was
that's
reading,
okay.
yeah, and I was reading that it was really simple to make those changes. That all you need to do is just initial it and then have it re-notarized or something like that, initial date it, and then so that way it's up to date. So it's not like, some people, when they hear legal documents, think a lawyer needs to be involved. I'm glad you mentioned that. It doesn't necessarily have to be. And so some people may not have access to the funds to that. But anybody can go to their local bank and get something notarized, or the post office or something like that. So it's a very easy process to make those changes. So I think, too, people, they don't like to talk about end of life anyway. And so if you can start that conversation earlier, but to know that it's not something that's permanent, that's something that can change. So, yes. And I know at PACE, that's something that y'all do when they start the program, is you kind of sit down and have that. Now, do y'all have that conversation with the families?
We do. We usually, because we have family present when we're first getting to know our participants, so we have the conversations together. And then also, depending on whether or not they may come in and it's too late to make those decisions,
that's a good point.
Or if they are on the verge, then we're going to do more than normal to get those decisions in place.
Right.
And we look at what are the family dynamics and things that will it make it difficult? Do we see that they might have a problem making decisions or being, together on the decisions? Then we'll work more towards, encouraging someone to get those forms in place.
I mean, you brought up a good point. I think a lot of times people start thinking about that if they see a cognitive decline in their loved one or parent, and that maybe that might be too late to start that process. So that's why, as Kathy's mentioned, that you need to start that maybe a little earlier. So it doesn't have to be something that generates from a family member. It can also be something that you generate as well. So absolutely.
Good information, Emily.
Absolutely. Thank you.
We're happy to have
much.
you with us today and talking about this. Not a glamorous topic that anyone likes to talk about, but definitely something that we all need to face because it's all in our future. So a couple of announcements that we missed earlier. I just wanted to let everyone know that September 4th from 1 o'clock to 4 o'clock, we are partnering at ADTS with the Community Blood Bank of the Carolinas to host a blood drive. This event will be here at our main offices at 105 Lawsonville Avenue, and we encourage everyone who's over the age of 16, over 120 pounds, and in generally good health to come out and join us. Our understanding is that the blood bank had a really tough July and that supplies are critically low, so your donation will make a difference. So please come out and join us on September 4th from 1 to 4 here at our main office. We also want to encourage our listeners to visit our website to complete the Rockingham County Aging Plan Needs Assessment. This anonymous survey can be located on our webpage under the News and Events section, and it's going to be used to guide the development of a county-wide aging plan that will help the county become a better place for older adults and caregivers across our community. So all of that information is being compiled and will go in to formulating that 5-year aging plan. If you would like more information on PACE of the Triad and the services that they offer, you can contact their office at 336-550-4040 or visit them online at pacetriad.org. For more information on the programs and services offered through ADTS, you can always visit our website at adtsrc.org or give us a call at 336-349-2343. We hope you can join us again next month when we're going to be talking about living healthy with diabetes and chronic disease management. And again, we thank you all for joining us today, and let us know if there's anything we can help you with.